Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast and media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Mathmachine and The Shark. Today is our 160th episode, and we're discussing the 2013 movie Orc Wars. So, let's get things started.
You like Tolkien and particularly Rankin Bass references, because oh boy, there's going to be a lot here.
Yep, we definitely have a lot planned.
Orcs versus guns. If this isn't a Warhammer 40k spinoff, then I don't know what it is.
The concept of this movie. Wow! The live-action remake of Onward took a way different direction than expected.
Well, I will say this, it probably is actually better than Onward, at least in my view. Orc Wars is probably one of the most independent movies we've talked about in this podcast. It was funded through, of all things, Kickstarter, and it had an extremely low budget. I couldn't actually get figures of how much this cost, but this movie stretched every single penny they had into the production. And for what it's trying to do, it is very well made for its budget, and it's actually very ambitious with its ideas, too. I feel like if there was a version of this that cost, like, say, $20 million, $30 million, it would be, like, an actual movie. But with that being said, this still is really well done for what it is. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
You also know it's an indie low-budget production movie because it has 5 different titles depending on what region you're in.
Well, it's either an indie movie or it's an Italian movie from the 70s, because those did too. Unlike other movies we've discussed, there's really not a lot of behind-the-scenes info that I could find, so this time we're just gonna get right into it. The movie begins with a man running through the forest while being chased by orcs. While this is happening, an eclipse happens overhead. The man catches up with 2 others, a man and a woman, as they all try to flee. One of the men is caught by the orcs and is killed, with them using a stock scream. It's not the Wilhelm scream, it's not the Howie scream. I think the best way to describe it is the real monsters scream, which definitely tells you what kind of audio production they had on this.
Would definitely make the scene better if they used a better stock scream, like, again, the aforementioned Wilhelm scream, and yet they didn't.
The pair then make their way to a clearing before the man is struck by an arrow and killed. The woman, who basically is just a discount Arwen, like literally it's the exact same character. You could tell that these guys were huge fans of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, especially with its cinematography and the orc designs, which we'll get to in a little bit. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, she's not even Arwen. I'm calling her Discount Princess Zelda.
Very true.
Well, excuse me, princess. Firstly. Secondly, Arwen connections go even further when you realize she also wields the blade Sting. Yeah, no joke, that is literally just Sting in her hands.
That is an interesting way of reusing a prop, I guess. The man then tells her to find the wizard Richard Conrad. The woman stands up and pulls out a sword, beginning to tell him that she's Princess Leia and all of her titles. In a good joke, one of the orcs cuts her off, saying, "We know who you are," and for such a low-budget movie, the orc makeup is really well made. I would not be shocked if 99% of the budget went to the makeup because, okay, it's not Peter Jackson level quality or anything like that, but it still looks really impressive because you gotta figure, these guys are acting under really heavy makeup and heavy prosthetic work. For a movie to cost this little, they actually look pretty decent, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, go ahead, Angron.
That one title for Orc Wars definitely did not lie. We came here expecting to see orcs, and we definitely see orcs. And speaking of Peter Jackson, looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
Yeah, so normally it takes me a while to find something that I do like about these indie productions, because you can typically find something in here and it'll be somewhat entertaining for the movie. This one was really quick in what Lud was saying with the makeup and effects look surprisingly good for the orcs, and that line of, "We know who you are. Okay, I know exactly what kind of movie this is. I'm already gonna enjoy this. Thank you."
As the eclipse occurs, the cavern mouth then opens as she runs through it. The orcs stop at the mouth and snarl before the orcs' leader, who is a mysterious sorceress in white, tells them to chase the princess down. Now, the sorceress, from what I could tell, does not seem to have a name, so I just call her the sorceress in my notes, and she definitely has kind of a witch king vibes. The orcs begin chasing her as Leia makes it to the other side. The orcs are then stopped by a cowboy, Richard Conrad, telling them, "Evening, boys." The orcs shout that the wizard is there as the cowboy begins to gun them down. Conrad continues to shoot them, even when he runs out of ammo, as he has several more guns strapped to him. And obviously, the orcs studied under the tutorship of Zap Brannigan. I put waves upon waves of my own men to the kill bot until their killing capacity was reached and they exploded. And that's pretty much their battle strategy as a whole. Go ahead, Angron.
Meanwhile, pretty much everyone place your favorite Western line in this spot because this guy goes haywire with all the guns and whatnot while also looking the part. Mine would honestly be I win.
The orcs eventually flee as the sorceress stares at Conrad. The sorceress says that Alea will be hers no matter what as the eclipse begins to fade. She then manages to crush Conrad's heart with her hands, causing him to collapse as the gate closes. Conrad says that he is getting too old for this. Alea tells him to hold on, but Conrad dies as she weeps over his body. We then cut to the title card, which, again, looks really professional for this kind of a movie. This actually looks like a competently designed title card. They clearly had to spend a lot on that.
Because of the way that the shooter ends up dying, it looks like the White Witch is cast a curse or a dark spell on him, and then he's having his heart attack. So all I can think in my head is, she cast the magical, powerful spell of artery blockage.
Yeah.
We then cut to a motel room where our protagonist, John, is sleeping. While he sleeps, he continues to have war flashbacks until a knock on the door startles him. It turns out to be Katie, a realtor who tells him that she has the perfect place for him. It turns out to be a secluded place with no neighbors, as she says that it is everything that he asked for. John says that he'll take it as he closes the door. Go ahead, Angron.
Yeah, I gotta say, this realtor, for being a little bit of a did, is honestly the sweetest kind of realtor you could expect to meet in fiction. Honestly, more freaking realtors should be like her.
First thing that we see of our main character is him shirtless, and I can already hear people asking, why is he shirtless in this? And if you've seen this movie and you've seen his physique, you will understand the answer to that question.
Yeah, they clearly cast this guy for his looks and not his acting ability, which we'll get to that in a little bit. We then cut to them driving off to the countryside as Katie asks if John was in the military and he just got out. John, of course, says very little as he's obviously traumatized. Katie thanks him for his service. John just continues to stare off into space as Katie says that he'll love the property. As they continue to drive, a pickup truck pulls up next to them as three locals hoot and holler, with one of them basically asking her to work that gear shift. Obviously, these guys are cousins of the gas station fish from the SpongeBob movie. They're gonna ask if the car takes ketchup or mustard.
You want mustard or ketchup?
Katie rolls her eyes and tells him that I forgot to tell you that this property comes with a comfy hometown feel, thanks to its colorful locals. Katie then manages to bump them off the road as they drive off. We cut to them arriving at the cabin as she tells John that the reason it's furnished is that the previous owner said all of his possession goes to just whoever buys it next. So if John didn't buy it, it would just be sitting there in the middle of the woods forever. So good thing he wanted peace and quiet, I guess.
Also, to that end, part of my feed as of late have been abandoned places like churches, funeral homes, malls, and even houses. So that would make for a pretty interesting YouTube short, people exploring that particular cottage and finding a whole ass gun safe down there.
She tells him that they should have everything as he stares at the wide open space and rustic log cabin. He then continues to walk around for the next 30 seconds or so, which that's one of the few criticisms I have about this movie. They definitely have a lot of padding in it. Katie then gets out of her car and asks him how he likes it. He says that it's perfect as she asks if he wants a tour of it inside. He says no thanks as she gives him the keys, then congratulates him on being a homeowner. She then drives off as he enters the house. We see him just walking around the house for a bit before he heads upstairs to the bedroom. He sees behind a tarp in the bedroom, there's a series of astrological charts and star positions, causing John to be confused. He then heads into the basement where he finds a calendar marked with times and seconds, as well as something saying sweet ass juggernaut Jenny, which we'll find out what that is later on. And I do like the foreshadowing here. It's actually really well done. It might have worked a little bit better if we didn't have the intro scene with the orcs themselves.
What I like is one of the first things that he sees when he gets in this house is there's a shotgun just sitting right alongside the wall, and all I can think is, Urka.
Yeah. Or it could have been just the previous boomstick residents. You never know.
Turns out that's Ash Williams' boomstick, so yep, get ready for a zombie invasion, or orcs in this case.
The Deadites were way more advanced compared to how these orcs are, which we'll find out in a little while. John then finds a rocking chair and touches it before it falls apart. We cut to John putting it together and he takes it outside, sitting on it. He relaxes for a few moments before then seeing a strange figure off in the distance. Trying to see what it is, he gets on an ATV and rides off before eventually finding the mouth of the cave. He enters the cave and then finds some mysterious black liquid on the ground, and obviously what's going to happen now, he's going to become Venom. Alea sees him and runs off as John tries to follow her. We then cut back to the orc side of things as they begin chanting and slamming down their spears, as well as their leader begins to talk to the sorceress. He calls her the god of the after death and prays to her as a dragon appears behind them and roars. We're going to discuss the dragon more in detail later on, but yes, that is the reason we are talking about this incredibly obscure movie, and the CGI right now for it isn't that good, but it does improve. Let's put it that way. It does actually get better.
To explain how rough the CG is for this dragon, its neck is wriggling around like it's an eel. It looks like its head is a completely separate creature from the rest of its body.
Now I know where Lee the Eel got it from.
And it wiggles like a Garry's Mod model. Those who have played Garry's Mod and try to move an arm without properly setting the rest of the body will know what I am talking about.
Pretty sad that Dragonheart did a way better CGI dragon than this all those years ago, but regardless. Cut to John encountering headstones in a nearby forest, including that of Richard Conrad. Alea then creeps up behind him and holds her sword to his neck, asking if he is the new Sentinel. John says no, then just flips her over into the dirt. He tells her that he is John Norton and he owns this land, so she is trespassing. He then asks her about her elf ears, as she panics and says how she is awaiting the new Sentinel. John is confused at this, saying that he'll take her into town and talk to somebody before she kicks him in the face. He gets up and looks for her, but then finds no trace of her, somehow leaving him even more confused than he was before.
This begins a weird process that I've noticed with Princess Zelda. She has what I like to call plot personality. It goes extremely back and forth between her being this tough, macho warrior princess and this cute little delicate flower that will fall apart if you even so much as look in her direction.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. Like, one moment she's absolutely badass, like that one princess from freaking Spaceballs. But at the same time, there's the other side where she gets captured. Those moments are definitely justified, but when it's not as justified is when it can kind of get a little bit dubious.
We then cut to John repairing the roof while shirtless, and yes, this was a scene just to show off the guy's physique, and like we said earlier, that is definitely why they cast this guy, because he looked the part. He then sees the eclipse and is confused, before we then cut to him sleeping in his rocking chair with his rifle. Eventually, he goes inside to get a screwdriver. The sound of someone screaming alerts him. John asks, "Who's there? Show yourself," in a very wooden line delivery, as it turns out there's nothing but pitch black out there.
With regards to all the shirtless scenes, because this ain't the last one, I've said it before about movies like Thor, and I'll say it here. Hey, women like their eye candy too. Nothing wrong with that.
It turns out that an orc comes out of the shadows, followed by several more. John just stares at them in confusion, before an orc then sneaks up on him and throws him off his porch. One of the orcs asks where the girl is, as John yells that this is his property. Obviously, he got land ownership tips from Fuzzy Lumpkins. An orc tells another one to kill him as he attempts to fight the orc in hand-to-hand combat but fails. The first orc picks him up and begins strangling John before he is thrown to the ground. Seeing the screwdriver and hammer, he picks them up and stabs the orc in the neck with the screwdriver, killing him. John then beats up the other orc with a hammer repeatedly, killing him.
Honestly, for a low-budget movie, the kills in this movie are actually not only brutal, but they look really good. So, probably another thing where the budget went the most in.
What I love about this guy's stiff acting is, in a weird way, it kind of works, because it sort of gives this presentation of this entire time with the orc showing up, he just has this face of, this ain't even the weirdest shit I've seen today.
I've been through some shit. This doesn't even bother me.
John yells at them to get off his land before he is shot in the shoulder with an arrow as the orc yells at him that he has no magic. The orc leader tells the others to tear out John's spine. John pulls out his rifle and begins shooting them. He quickly manages to take down all of them except for the leader, who runs off and says, "Another time, wizard." John then manages to get onto his porch and pulls out the arrow before fainting. We cut to him having a war flashback, before all of the other soldiers approach a sword in the middle of the ground, wondering what it is. John approaches the sword as a blind man watches on, telling him that he is the guardian. All of the other soldiers then suddenly appears dead on the ground, before the blind man continues to say that he is the guardian, before the dragon roars yet again. And obviously what's going to happen next, SpongeBob is going to appear and turn into a clarinet. Trust me, John. After a surprisingly good jump scare of the orcs running to attack him, we cut to John waking up. It turns out that he is with the blind man from his dream, who welcomes him back to the land of the living. John asks where he is, as the blind man offers him a drink that will repair his strength. John drinks it as the man says that John heals easily, which is very good. Obviously, the last guy this blind man had in his cabin was the Frankenstein monster, and sadly, we know how that one went.
You say from his dream or of his dream? Because I'll tell you, this guy's my favorite human actor, so he's my dream.
The blind man introduces himself as Whitefeather, as John asks what were the things that attacked him. Whitefeather calls them, among other things, Fey children and Scourge of Menace, before saying that they are better known as orcs. John doesn't believe him as he continues to get dressed and puts on his hat. Whitefeather continues to explain that the orcs come through a world gate, and that there are many world gates that each connect the 9 realms, which we started off ripping off Lord of the Rings, now we're ripping off Mortal Kombat. He says that each gate needs a sentinel to keep the balance, and since the beginning, a warrior has always been there to protect the gates. John asks Whitefeather why he does this, as Whitefeather says it is his job to protect the Guardian. John doesn't believe this, as Whitefeather says that John is the new Guardian. He says that John is the Sentinel, as John says, "You already said that to me," as Whitefeather says, "I don't think that I did." We then cut back to the orcs trying to control the dragon as it thrashes around and roars again, in what I think is actually reused footage from earlier, so right off the bat they're already repeating sequences, but regardless. One of the orcs from before arrives and tells the sorceress about John, saying that he is even stronger than the last protector. The orc says that Fangmark and his troops are on the other side and he can still get the princess. The sorceress says yes as the dragon then roars in triumph. We then cut to a group of orcs making their way through the woods before a gunshot calls out. Fangmark stops, asking what the noise is, and Fangmark is probably the closest this movie has to an actual serious actor. He's played by Isaac C. Singleton Jr., who is best known for voicing Thanos in non-Infinity War Marvel-related projects, for example, the video games, cartoon episodes, and the like. He also was Barbossa's first mate in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and he was really good in that as well, so the fact they got an actual professional actor to play this role in this really low-budget movie, I give him credit, because at least for me, he is the best actor in the movie by a wide margin. He makes this really stock character almost threatening in a way. Oh, go ahead, Angron.
You just reminded me that he was also Soundwave from the War for Cybertron game. We literally have Soundwave as an orc, which is pretty damn epic, all things considered.
I think they got this actor because he is having a fucking ball in this role. You can tell he is just having so much fun being this orc lieutenant, and it is just one of the roles of his dreams.
It turns out that the gunshot was from the rednecks, who are all driving around and firing off their guns. The orcs ask if this is the wizard they were told about, as Fangmark says that, "I do not fear this wizard," and that they will lead him to the princess. We cut to the 3 rednecks sitting by the fire, as one of them, Scooter, is telling the others a story. Obviously, he's telling them the story about how Bubble Buddy let him drown that one time at Goo Lagoon. Another one, Leroy, yells at him to shut up and get more firewood. Scooter asks why he has to get the firewood, as Leroy says, "Because you suck at telling stories." And these guys are just such caricatures. It's honestly laughable in a way. Makes what they do with Scooter a little bit surprising. You think like, oh, these guys are just cannon fodder, which they are, but they aren't.
Yeah, these remind me of those hillbillies from South Park: The Fractured But Whole, to be against whatever the player chooses as their character, only to get absolutely curb stomped by the player. In this case, they're not exactly curb stomped by the player.
Scooter whines about Leroy always forcing him to do things, as the other redneck, Billy, tells Leroy he's too hard on Scooter. Leroy threatens Billy that he'll make him get firewood as well, as Billy then says, "But I tell good stories," which... okay, that's a line that actually did make me laugh. This movie isn't really a comedy, but it has its somewhat funny moments when it tries to be. Scooter is heading into the graveyard where Alea is. She threatens him with a stick, asking him where the wizard is. Scooter says, "I'm adopted," in response to that, as she asks where the sentinel is. Scooter says he doesn't know anything about that, but says that he'll help her, and this is a direct quote, "in a non-pervy way," which... we'll find out why right now, because Billy arrives and asks Scooter what's going on. Alea asks him if he is the wizard, as the redneck says, "Don't worry, Dorothy. I got your wizard right here." And he tries to force himself on her, which, yeah, Billy is the worst. I am so glad what happens to him in a couple of seconds. Scooter pushes Billy into the ground, yelling at him how the woman says she's a princess. Alea leaves as Scooter runs off yelling how I finally got a girl and look at what you do. Billy gets up and begins walking through the woods before the orcs come out at him. He says, what is this, some kind of Civil War reenactment? And yeah, this is the best Civil War reenactment ever. Remember when Saruman was on the side of the South and Rhett Butler stabbed him in the neck and he fell in the water wheel? That was the best part, wasn't it?
You'd say Civil War. I see this and I immediately think Vietnam, a la American Dad.
Fangmark says they are there to kill a wizard as they kill him by impaling him on a stake. Like, not just him screaming in the cuts either. We actually see the act of him getting impaled on a stake, which really caught me off guard with how violent it was. Like, you can tell this was an indie movie because they basically did whatever the hell they wanted. And if they wanted to have him die like this, so be it. Because, wow, I was not expecting that level of brutality from a movie like this. They call back to it later, don't you worry.
So seeing this impalement scene made me realize, in The Hobbit, apparently that's a mistranslation. It's not supposed to be 15 birds in 5 fir trees. It's 15 birds up 5 fir trees.
Wow.
To that scene and to what you just described, I can only say fatality. It won't be the last one either.
Like I said, one of the things that got most of the budget was the kills because they don't cut away. You see everything that happens to the guy. That's not the most brutal thing that happens in this scene.
We cut to Scooter returning as Leroy asks where the firewood is. Scooter tells Leroy, screw you, as the two men begin wrestling on the ground, with Leroy saying, you never talk to me like that, you understand? And yeah, I can easily see these guys just getting into fights like this over the last beer can, you know?
Yeah, definite Rocksteady and Bebop vibes with these two.
The two men continue to fight on the ground as Billy's impaled body is brought to them. Leroy asks Billy where the wood is before he finally notices that, oh, that's right, Billy is dead. The two of them then scream as the orc are heard in the woods. Leroy pulls out his gun and begins just shooting randomly in various directions, while Scooter gets on the ground and cowers. Leroy then manages to shoot Fangmark's shoulder as the orc growls at him. Fangmark notes how this is a weak wizard as they grab both Leroy and Scooter. They ask Leroy where the girl is as Leroy says he doesn't know what they're talking about. Fangmark then decapitates Leroy with a single strike of his axe, then asks the same to Scooter, which, again, they do not shy away from this. You actually see this guy basically get his head lopped off. And yeah, it's brutal. It definitely is brutality.
He says he calls him a weak wizard, but to be perfectly honest, he probably just has very low perception, which is what they mistake for magic.
So you'll notice very early on that, yeah, this is low budget because you can see it's pretty bad effects for muzzle flare whenever they're shooting off a gun, or the impaled body. It's just a little blood spattering on the actor as he's just standing still. Stuff like that. I gotta give this movie credit. It got the spirit.
That's why I said I would have loved to see a version of this with like a multi-million-dollar budget, just to see what these guys could come up with. Because if you could do this much with this little, yeah, this is really a movie to be commemorated. I'm sorry. I really feel this movie has a lot going for it just because of what they were able to do with what they had. As I said in the intro, they stretched every cent they had on this. Scooter then says that he'll never tell them, as Fangmark instructs the other orcs to only pull out half of his intestines. Two of the orcs appear to gut Scooter, but Alea appears right then and there and decapitates both of them. She says how she knew they were there from their stench, as Fangmark says to go get her. The orcs begin to chase after her, leaving Scooter behind. Alea then runs past John's house as he's busy making a barricade. She knocks on the door desperately as the orcs begin to arrive. She asks to be let in, but John just tells her, go away, you're trespassing. Okay, you're the only guy in thousands of miles. I think you might want to see if someone needs help.
Scene is a perfect microcosm of what I was talking about with Princess Zelda. She starts the scene by just being a badass and killing 2 orcs without any sort of problem at all, and she acts like she could take the whole damn thing, and then she just runs off and, oh, help me, I'm so scared, help me. Like, what?
That's one of the few things you could say about this movie. They did not get characterization down. He tells her to leave as the orcs begin to corner her, with Fangmark saying there are no more wizards for her to turn to. John then opens the door and lets her in, then turns off all of the lights. Fangmark tells 3 orcs to watch the house and for the others to follow him. The orcs enter the house before John takes one and slits his throat. Fangmark and the other 2 orcs see this after he is dead and roars, telling the others to spread out. One of the orcs heads to the upstairs bedroom, where John is hiding, and John promptly shoots him in the head. From downstairs, an orc says that he heard a wizard as Fangmark bemoans, "How many wizards are there in this damnable world?" You could really tell the guy playing Fangmark is really having a lot of fun with the role.
Yeah, and to answer his question, buddy, you're in the heart of the United States of America. You, my friend, are going to be seeing wizards as far as the eye can see.
Fangmark then hears a noise from upstairs and checks the bedroom before finding Alea hiding in a closet. She tackles Fangmark as the two struggles before he then manages to throw her onto a bed, cutting her cheek with a dagger. John jumps out and begins to strangle Fangmark with a rope before finally managing to choke him out. Alea then faints as John gives her a gun, then says that he'll be right back. We cut to him going downstairs and approaching the lone orc in a slow-mo shot, which this movie loves to do that with slow-mo shots, and sometimes it looks really cool, but other times it feels like padding in a way. He then manages to just shoot the orc out of his house, causing him to land near the others. He tells the others that if they step foot on his property, he will hunt them down and kill them. One of the orcs tries to threaten him, but John just shoots him as the other two run off. He then goes up to Alea, seeing that she is unconscious and carries her out. We cut to him arriving at Whitefeather's, telling him that there was something wrong with Alea. Whitefeather says that he served her father and she has been poisoned. He then asks who John bought the ranch from, as John says it was from Conrad. Whitefeather then tells him that Conrad was the wizard of Edenok, which is what they call Earth. And this is another moment I really do like. The orcs think that Conrad, and by proxy John, is a wizard because of Earth's advanced technology with things like guns. And that is such a clever touch. I love that. It's one of those little touches they didn't have to do, but it's really neat that they did. And we'll talk about another cool instance with that later. Whitefeather says, as a boy, the orcs came and slaughtered his entire family. Conrad saved him, but the orcs still managed to cut out his eyes, which, again, that is some brutal stuff for this movie, you know?
Exactly. We're going to be saying fatality every time that sort of thing comes up.
And again, it's not something they just tell because they eventually show it.
They definitely do, and it is a sight. Whitefeather then says that Conrad took his grandfather's place, and now John has taken Conrad's place. John says that people always come to me for protection, but it always just ends with blood on my hands. Whitefeather says that John is the only one who could fight, as John says that he can't do this. We then cut to a shot of Alea's face, as John asks what the orcs will want with her. Whitefeather says that he doesn't know. We then cut to the house, as John is busy stacking up the bodies of the dead and dragging them outside, before realizing that he's missing one. He heads upstairs, only for, in another really good jump scare moment, Fangmark leaps out and tackles him. The two fight for a moment, as John manages to beat Fangmark into unconscious with the butt of his rifle. We then cut to Fangmark literally being thrown down a flight of stairs in another badass moment. John then turns on the light and sees a tarp covering up part of the wall. He takes it down to see a huge array of weapons, including a sword predominantly placed in the middle, which I'm sure will not come in handy later and it's just there for set decoration. Oh, go ahead, Math.
All I could think when they showed that wall of weapons was, this is my Murica shrine.
Yep. Like I said, gun basement. I said gun locker, but you know what I mean.
We then cut to the orcs in their realm as the gate opens up yet again. The two orcs that survived returns as the sorceress screeches at them, telling them all to not fail her. All of the orcs run out, and this is another moment that is really cool. One of the orcs is slightly too slow in leaving the gate, and he gets crushed in half by it, which really brutal stuff right there, and it's realistic. And that aspect will definitely not come into play at all. We then cut to John tying up Fangmark, and this is an unintentionally funny moment that made me laugh because it's clearly just used whatever props they had. He's tying up Fangmark by using these incredibly thin pieces of plastic. And keep in mind, Fangmark is this giant 7-foot-tall orc. He looks like he could probably rip through that piece of plastic like it's tissue paper, but he can't. John then uses a taser to wake up Fangmark, which causes the orc to scream. John asks what did Fangmark do to Alea, as Fangmark says that he can smell John's fear, and asks why orc kind fears their magic. He will never know. John electrocutes the orc again and again. I do like that, how they think it's some kind of a wizard magic, even though to us it's just an ordinary object like an electric taser.
On the subject of, reusing stuff, reusing props, even sound effects, the scream the orc does every time he gets shocked is the same one each time. It gets reused over and over and over.
And considering he screams a lot in this scene, you're going to hear that same noise over and over and over.
So I think that this is actually my favorite scene in this whole movie because this is where Isaac Singleton just eats every bit of scenery in the entire room. This man is loving playing Fangmark, and he is just owning every bit of it.
All while being confined to a chair. Also, yeah, John is just having none of his nonsense because every time Fangmark is just there eating up the scenery trying to taunt John, think of his head going, zap zap zap.
Perfect. Fangmark then says that Alea is sleeping. John asks how many orcs are there, as Fangmark says there are only a few scouts, but soon entire hordes will be there. He threatens John that we shall feed upon your marrow and drink your blood. You could really tell, as Matt said, this is probably my favorite scene in the movie too, and it's for the exact same reason you said, because this guy is having such a ball as the scenery-chewing villain. He acted way above his pay grade for this movie, that's all I'm saying. John, of course, just continues to taser him again. Fangmark laughs at this, before John tells him to keep his answers to the point. Fangmark then gets tased again and again and again, before Fangmark eventually tells him the answer. He says that Alea is the last of her bloodline, and once her blood is spilt, all of the gates will be open. He says that the orcs will rampage through the world, and will torture Alea beyond imagination when they find her. His description of what they will do to her, combined with his voice, I'm sorry, Fangmark is actually a really threatening and well put together villain. I mean, he's hammy as all hell, but he actually is a really compelling character. I dare say he might be the best written character of this movie. John simply says, "The hell they will," before a horn blows as Fangmark laughs, saying they are already here. John then tasers Fangmark into unconsciousness and leaves him there, as we cut to an orc blowing a horn of war. We then cut to Alea waking up in Whitefeather's home with her getting up. She peeks outside as Whitefeather asks her what she sees. She says it is the orcs, as Whitefeather hands her a gun, trying to teach her how to use it. She aims it at the orc, but is then pulled out by another one who knocks her to the ground. Alea then leaps up and decapitates the orcs yet again. She raises her sword at them, as a group of orcs all shoot arrows at her, minutes before Whitefeather pulls her inside. We then cut to John riding off on his ATV to Whitefeather's. Whitefeather tells her to get to Norton's house and he will hold them off. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
What I love about this scene is it's not just that Whitefeather pulled Princess Zelda in, it was literally a yoink, and then the arrow volley came.
I know. It really looks silly when you actually see it. We then cut to her running through the wood, killing several orcs along the way. She manages to deflect an arrow from one of them. The orc commander arrives, telling them that they will spill her blood here. John rides up on his ATV and guns several of them down, then takes her and drives off. The orc commander tells them to go after him, as John asks her about what happened with Whitefeather. She shakes her head sadly, as we then cut to the orcs chasing her. He tells her to keep the engine running, while he gets behind her and starts shooting the orcs, which, all I have to say is this. Man, this is a weird remake of Mario Kart Double Dash.
Nice.
John mows down several more orcs until he eventually throws a grenade at several of them, and this is really a misleading title. This isn't Orc Wars, because Wars would indicate that the orcs actually managed to make some kills. This is more like the Orc Massacre.
Yep, good point.
We then cut to them arriving at John's house as they go to the basement, and it turns out that Fangmark managed to escape, and how he did so, he sliced through his own hand to get out of the wraps, which, that is really a badass moment right there. It's off screen, but it still shows just how tenacious this guy is. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
The more that this movie goes on, the more I just came to regard Fangmark as the Giga Chad of this entire film.
John then hands Alea a rifle as they go to the roof, with him preparing a long-range rifle. He then snipes several of the orcs as they all run to the house, only for all of them to get killed in quick succession. Alea asks if this really is magic, as John just continues to gun them down. It really is almost comical just how the orcs just keep on dying over and over and over again. Like, they don't even try. They get maybe a couple of feet and then they get gunned down. It's almost like a comedy in a way. The orc commander threatens John they will cut out his heart and eat it, only for John to shoot the commander in the shoulder, causing them to retreat. Then cut to night as Alea is sharpening her sword. John asks how long they have until the orcs return, as Alea says it is when the two moons unite in the sky. John wonders if they can calculate when the orcs will return, due to it being an astronomical chart. Alea says it is the work of the wizards, as John remarks, that term keeps getting thrown around more and more lately. She thanks him for saving his life, telling him that the Sentinels are great protectors, and people go to them in the times of hardship for safety, even before they are known to be Sentinels. John tells him to think nothing of it, as she says, this is his destiny.
Yeah, going back to White Feather thing, I like how just John is this almost soulless war vet. Leia is the back and forth badass slash kidnapped princess. And then we got White Feather here, who's just vibing, who occasionally does the exponential lore dump, but otherwise, he's just an absolute vibe. He's super chill, but he's also one of those hidden badasses that just make this movie feel a lot more excellent than it actually is.
Knock on the door, then alerts them as they prepare themselves. And it's funny because it's like, what, are the orcs gonna knock before entering? Hey there, we're here to slaughter you all. Is this a bad time? It turns out instead to be White Feather, with Scooter in tow. White Feather says how they now have a brief reprise from all the battling, as he says how he found Scooter in the woods crying. And I'm sorry, I'm a little sympathetic to Scooter here. You found your friends horribly, horribly murdered by these unstoppable, seemingly unkillable things. I mean, how are you supposed to react to that?
Exactly. Like, I get he and his friends weren't exactly the peak of gentlemanly stature, but I'm sorry. Like, trauma's still trauma. That man would 100% fold in a possible Smile sequel. He was allowed to be cast in it.
Scooter asks what the things are that attacked him, as John explains that they're orcs. White Feather removes his blindfold, which, as we mentioned earlier, shows off his horribly scratched out eyes as he says, I know, I'm damn good looking. Which, again, White Feather is definitely the best human character of the bunch.
That was the single funniest line of this entire movie, and the actor's delivery was perfect. I love this character.
You definitely get a good chuckle, and that, honestly, you can't help but feel less and less guilty about laughing each time you look at it. And it's honestly pretty great.
Scooter says they can run somewhere that the orcs can't find them, like New Mexico. And I will point out, if they go to New Mexico, all that's going to happen is that Walter White is going to get the orcs hooked on crystal meth. Then what's going to happen? John says that they're not running, as Scooter says that he could take Leroy's truck, as Leroy is not there to drive it anymore. John says that they will stay and fight, as he says all he wanted was to be left alone, and they brought the war to him, so he wants them gone, which really you could just replace as Rambo's speech in Rambo Last Blood, and it would be the exact same.
Or, more accurately, it would probably be something like Judge Dredd, I am the law! If we're really going the Sylvester Stallone route.
Alea asks what they will do, as John tells them to wait there. Scooter asks if he needs any help, as John says he does, staring at the calendar with the Juggernaut Jenny on it. We cut back to the orc world as the sorceress arrives while the orcs prepare a catapult. An orc tells the sorceress that more clans are arriving to help, then asks her if her sisters will be there to help. She says that her sisters are murdered and she is the last one, as she then basically force chokes the orc to death. And I'm just sad that we didn't get a quip after her. Be careful not to choke on your aspirations, Commander. We then cut to Alea and Scooter looking at the stars, as she notes how the stars are different here, and how this realm is such a strange place. She then looks at Scooter in concern, then telling him that John was right and Scooter should run. Scooter says that it wouldn't be right to do so, especially when a beautiful princess like you is in danger. It's almost like they're trying to do a romantic subplot between Scooter and Alea, and it doesn't go anywhere. It's like for this one single scene, and that's it. Nothing else. It really feels kind of weird. A radio goes off as John arrives. John goes inside and makes a plan, telling them that they have to keep the orcs off balance if they want any chance of winning. John says that he wishes that they had something larger to handle a large group, then asks Alea how many orcs can be there. She says that there can be many troops, and that there are no shortage of orcs in the realm. John says there won't be any after this, as White Feather says that he is proud of John for embracing who he really is. John then says how he doesn't know if any of this is real, and all might be some kind of nightmare for him. And this is the worst acted moment from John in this movie. From here, he doesn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting, but for this sequence, this definitely is the weak link here.
When you say worst acted, considering how bad this guy's already been, I can only picture that they put in a literal rock in his place, and that would have done better.
Whitefeather tells him otherwise, as Scooter finds a set of keys for the Juggernaut. John takes the keys and walks outside to a garage where he finds something off screen. We then cut to the orc world yet again, where the dragon roars and the gates open, with all of the orcs running through. The orcs are carrying a catapult with them as they all roar and do war dances. The orc commander then kicks one orc named Rawhead to go to the house. And no, this is not Rawhead Rex, even though a Clive Barker crossover would be awesome.
The orcs in this scene look a bit scared and worried. I think what the commander needed to have done is he needed to have brought out a synth keyboard and started belting out, "Where there's a whip, there's a way."
Rawhead runs off while carrying something, then places it to reveal that it is Leroy's severed head, and then runs off. Feels to me like they were like, oh, we could do like the scene where the orcs throw the severed heads in minus thirds too. We could do the same thing, and yet they didn't have like a fraction of the budget, so this is the best you got. A single severed head on a stick.
Honestly, with that description, it feels like the orc equivalent of shitting at someone's lawn and running away before they can figure out who did it. Honestly, imagine in their world, that would be the equivalent of a practical joke.
Alea then shoots the orcs in the back with an arrow as the commander then laughs. He says that the elf is at the cottage as they all prepare the catapult. We then cut to Katie's car pulling up to the house, and this is a legitimate joke that made me laugh. The shot of the orc commander, what the fuck is going on here? Face made me laugh. Kudos to these actors for acting under all these prosthetics and makeup. And again, for this kind of budget, these guys are doing really, really well.
Also, the fact that Katie has no idea what the hell is going on, and yet all she cares about is the fact they blew up her car and she wants blood because of that is honestly pretty hilarious. Like, again, we need more real estate speculators like her in media, because this woman goes from zero to kick-ass for the most part in literal seconds.
Yeah, with the exception of Whitefeather, I would have rather have seen a movie following the orcs themselves, because they are just so great in everything in this.
Oh, easily. And getting back to something a little bit earlier, when she's knocking on the door and asking John how she likes the new neighborhood before the orcs blow up her car with the catapult, it's really obvious she's in front of a green screen here. This is probably the worst effect of the movie, because you can actually see a little bit of the chroma key outline, which is really surprising. I guess they didn't have that much time to film this sequence, but for as good as the other effects are, you think that like chroma key they could probably do a decent job with, but regardless.
When they initially blow up the car with the catapult, oh, the fire effect that they use looks so bad. I give them credit. They actually used like some blocks of wood and actually set a fire so that it's an actual physical prop that's on fire after that, but the initial explosion effect was...
And it's not the last time they use an effect like that. The orcs all cheer as her car burns before she is brought inside by Alea. The orcs load up the catapult yet again and prepare to fire, but John jumps out of a hole in the ground and fires upon them. And much like the sequence in Taken 3, where we have like 50 million cuts of Liam Neeson jumping over a fence, we have like at least 15 shots of him popping out of the ground with a gun here, which I guess was to try and look cool, but the amount of shots they have, it makes it a little bit silly.
Yeah, it was cheesy in the early 2000s. It's cheesy here. Still fun, but yeah. Anyways, go ahead, Shark.
Oh, reusing one shot over and over and over. Must be One Piece feeling then.
John then guns down several of the orcs as they all fall. The commander tells the archers to kill him, but John sets off dynamite, blowing up even more of the orcs. The orc commander says that he will eat John, but John has gone, confusing them. Several of the orcs are gunned down, as it turns out to be Katie, who somehow is a random realtor who knows how to use a sniper rifle.
Again, America. Wizards everywhere.
And as we mentioned earlier, Katie says that she's doing this because those bastards destroyed her car, which Okay, good reasoning right there. The orc commander yells at the orcs to get the princess, as John then fires on the orcs, killing even more of them. And I'm surprised they don't just have the orcs slip on a bunch of banana peels and stab themselves with their own swords. That's how inept they are at this moment. John then charges at all of them, killing even more orcs. He continues to gun them down before he is surrounded by them. John then pulls out a walkie-talkie and says that it's Jenny's turn, and yeah, Jenny Wakeman would be a very welcome addition to this film. It turns out that Jenny arrives, and it turns out to be this military reinforced car, which is a pretty good prop, I'm not gonna lie. They definitely put some budget into this as well.
As soon as that semi-tank came onto screen, all I could hear in my head was, America! Fuck yeah!
Classic.
Yeah. All I could think in my mind was, oh, hi, Jenny.
Scooter is manning the gun at the back while Whitefeather drives, and I want to reiterate that. Maybe you didn't hear how weird that is. Whitefeather, the blind man, is driving. Definitely not the best character they could have had to drive the semi-tank. Let's put it that way. Could have had them reverse the roles and it would have made a little more sense. Scooter is operating the turret on the back as John runs off with even more orcs being slain. The orcs use the catapult on the vehicle, causing it to nearly tip over. Whitefeather asks what that was, as Scooter says that it is a launchy, flippy thing. John radios if they need help, as Scooter says that they does. John jumps onto the vehicle and uses a rocket launcher to blow up the catapult. The orcs are shocked at this, as Scooter says that the thing is now a blown up pile of nothing. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Scooter is very much a character that I get what they're going for with him, that he's the plucky redneck character, and that line sold it. That was hilarious.
The orcs are continuously slaughtered by the humans and all flee, as the orc commander tells his troops to slice open that creature's belly as they run to the tank. John radios Alea for her and Katie to pull back. They continue to kill orcs as Alea and Katie go inside, only for Katie to get shot by Fangmark. It turns out that Fangmark has stolen one of the guns and says, "Now I am a great wizard too," which is actually going to come back into play a little bit while, and yeah, it is such a great moment. Oh, go ahead, Shark.
I love how by this point when we're telling the story, we're just like, oh, and they kill some orcs. Oh, and then they're killing some orcs. Oh, and they also kill some orcs.
Don't blame us, blame the filmmakers, because that literally is what it is. If I had to call this Orc Wars, again, this is not a war. Like, this is the most lopsided war since the Anglo-Zanzibar War. Look that up if you don't know about that one. Anyway, go ahead, Math.
Just saw Fangmark come back in with a gun. I was like, oh, happy day, the main character's back.
Also, the level 15 fighter has officially picked up the firearms specialist feat.
Katie tries to shoot at Fangmark, but doesn't hit him, as she tells Alea to run. Alea runs out as Fangmark shoots Katie dead. We then cut to a shot of the battlefield littered with dead orcs, as the commander tells them all to call upon the mighty Bokvir. They all begin to chant as Scooter asks John what a Bokvir is. He says he doesn't know, as Scooter says he doesn't like the sound of it. We then cut to the inside of the house, where Alea is fighting with Fangmark, who tells her that the spilling of blood is long overdue. Then cut to the group of orcs pulling the dragon out from earlier, who is Bokvir, and although some of the lines of dialogue call Bokvir a he, the script refers to Bokvir as a she, hence why we're doing this. This might have been just a continuity error because, again, this film had such a low budget, I don't know if they had room for other takes. A roar is heard as Scooter asks what it was, with Whitefeather saying it's something worse than orcs. The orcs continue to chant as Bokvir finally shows up, flying to the sky. The effects on Bokvir earlier were really not good. This actually is a little bit better, but it comes with a caveat. Don't quote me on this. I think this is a stock dragon animation, if memory serves. It definitely kind of looks like it. Like, this is a pre-rendered dragon asset that anyone could use for any purpose that's public domain in that. Now, don't get me wrong, this actually does look pretty good, and the way it's incorporated into the footage is well done. And again, I might be lying. This thing might have been made completely by scratch, in which case, bravo. But I get the vibe that it's actually a pre-made asset. Bokvir is brown and green scaled, and definitely has a more reptilian look than anything else. Scooter and John are shocked that dragons are real, with the latter asking Whitefeather if he knew about this. Scooter asks, "Is it friendly?" As they then drive off and fire at the Dragoness, Balkvir roars and shoots fire at them, blocking all of their shots as the orcs continue to cheer. John shoots a rocket at Balkvir, causing her to collapse to the ground, seemingly killing the dragon. John tells them to stop as they all stare at it, and this is another moment that actually got me pretty good. It turns out that Balkvir is alive. She gets up and snaps at the heroes as John and Whitefeather get out. Scooter, meanwhile, is burnt alive by the Dragoness, and this is done in another really cheap effect. They literally put a flame filter over the footage of Scooter screaming. You can really tell this is like almost an Instagram filter kind of thing. Yeah, this is probably the second worst effect of the movie after the explosion car from earlier. The vehicle then explodes as Balkvir hovers towards John. John runs to the house, telling Alea to get out, but the walkie-talkie is abandoned on the ground. He climbs up to the roof and begins sniping at the dragon as it takes to the sky. She then sets the cabin on fire, causing John to fall off the roof. The sword manages to land near him, as John is unconscious for a few moments, with it then cutting to various objects of the house on fire, including the rocking chair and the kitchen and the bedroom, which, again, I think is done pretty decently. In John's dream, his former army buddies arrive and tell him to get moving as he says that he failed. The army buddies tell him that he's the sentinel as John sees Fangmark carrying Alea, it giving him the strength to go on. Fangmark then joins the rest of the orc, telling the commander that although the commander took care of the wizards, he captured the princess. The orc commander is surprised that Fangmark lives, as Fangmark then says that, "Yes, I live, and now I surpass you." And he shoots the other orc dead, which I really like this moment. That is such a great character moment that now that Fangmark has the wizard's magic, aka a gun, he is now better than his superior, and he just goes and instantly wipes him out, which, that is such a great moment. Like, I want to see what these filmmakers could have done with a huge budget if they have this level of good storytelling.
Really great that the guy was able to off his superior with just one bullet. Yeah, I doubt they really mastered the ability of ammunition crafting in their world, so it's going to be a little awkward when they find out that that magic is a little more finite than they first thought.
I love how this was Fangmark just going, "Look at me, bang, I am the captain now."
He says that now, since he is in command, they will take Alea back to sacrifice her. We cut to Balkvir chasing John on his ATV, before we then cut to the orcs returning to the sorceress. And this is another moment that actually surprised me. You wouldn't think a movie like this would actually have a script with some really clever moments. Fangmark points the gun at the sorceress, saying that he will not sacrifice the princess until the sorceress releases his clan from her servitude. So these orcs, this whole time, were basically enslaved. So what does that say? That is legitimately a really a twist I was not expecting, believe it or not, for Fangmark to try and kill the sorceress.
What this says is, this is why Sauron offers dental.
The sorceress simply stabs Fangmark as his body rolls down a hill. She then says that Alea will be the final sacrifice as Alea panics. They chain her to a pole as the sorceress prepares to kill her, but are interrupted by a whistle. The sorceress asks if the wizard has arrived, as it turns out instead to be Whitefeather, who says that until John arrives, they will fight him. The sorceress tells the orcs to kill him as they try to attack Whitefeather, with Whitefeather being the badass that he is, also easily manages to take them all down. The sorceress is not upset at this, as she tells more orcs to kill him as they swarm the man. We then cut to John driving the ATV again and avoiding the Dragoness's fire. We then cut back to Whitefeather fighting off many orcs, but it turns out there are too many for him. However, he manages to kill the final orc in a mutual kill before succumbing to his wounds and dying. As Alea weeps over him, the sorceress laughs evilly. John manages to make it to the mouth of the cave as Balkvir breathes fire on the ATV, causing it to explode. The Dragoness then chases him to the cave as John holds her off with a sword, then looks at his watch. This is such a creative way for John to defeat the Dragoness, because up to this point, Balkvir has been nearly invincible. Not even rocket launchers have been able to take her down. So you're thinking, what does? The gate manages to close on top of the Dragoness, crushing her to death. That actually is a really creative moment. How he uses that to his advantage, that the Dragoness, of course, cannot survive in both realms and is instantly sliced in half by the gate. Such a cool, clever moment there.
Yeah, like if Isaac Clarke from Dead Space can defeat a invincible enemy like the Hunter with something as simple as a rocket engine, John can handle something like a dragon with a giant slab of stone.
When bullets and rockets do not work, use the old standby of a door.
John then goes into the orc world as they all stare at him. He proclaims that I am the Sentinel, as in another really nice touch, the orcs instantly just run to get out of there. They know that this guy has been nearly unstoppable. He's been slaughtering them left, right, and center, and it's like, okay, we're done. See ya.
It's probably that at this very moment they went like, how many of us have died yet? About 20,000. Let's get out of here.
He then approaches the sorceress, who disappears as John frees Alea. The sorceress then reappears as John manages to stab her in the stomach with a sword. She screeches in pain, then uses her powers to try and kill John before he can kill her. Fangmark manages to climb to the top of the hill and hands the gun to Alea, telling her to kill the sorceress. It's such a clever bit of writing that this orc that for 90% of the movie has been the villain, you realize, oh damn, this guy was just misunderstood the whole time. Like, they're evil, but they're not like this evil. Alea runs up to the sorceress and just shoots her straight up in the head, causing the sorceress to be set on fire.
I salute Fangmark. He's the true hero of this movie.
Apparently that headshot combined with the stab to the stomach was enough to kill the sorceress as she disappears. Alea picks up John as all of the orcs stand on a hill, with John telling her to get behind him. However, instead of attacking, the orcs all decide to just leave, with Fangmark acknowledging John with, "Another time, wizard." Okay, I mean, the orcs got what they wanted. The sorceress is dead, so they don't have to serve her anymore and release the gate, so they can just go back and, I guess, do whatever the hell the orcs do all day. We then cut to daytime as John and Alea are sitting on a hill, with her saying that those who died in the combat shall never be forgotten. John stares out into the distance, including a castle. Looks like it could be stock footage, but I'm not exactly sure. He says that this realm is beautiful. Alea says that you thought it was all a dream, as they stare for a while. After this, John says he has to leave, as Alea begs him to stay with her, but he says that he can't. The movie ends with him saying that he is the Sentinel of Earth, and to call him if he ever needs her again, and then leads to the world gate as it closes. Yeah, that's pretty much it for Orc Wars. Its financial success is unknown. It got really mixed to negative reviews. I don't know, with these kind of movies, you kind of have to grade them on a curve. Like, you are not getting Peter Jackson. This is like an incredibly low-budget film that, for what it is, I think this movie is pretty good. Is it perfect, like the best B movie ever? No, but I would say for what the budget is, it's at least 7 out of 10 worthy in my book, because, you know, they did the best with what they had. They put every last penny of what they got from Kickstarter into the production of this film.
Yeah, I don't understand why this has a 3.5 on IMDb. This is basically a 7 movie. Compare this to all of the other high production $100 million movies, that's fucked. Oh, we're rating this low because it has low effects. Well, yeah, it costs $1 million. What the fuck do you expect? This is so well written and so well acted for how low budget it is. I would say it's basically a 7 or 8 movie as well. It is the living embodiment of, he a little confused, but he got the spirit. This is so fun and entertaining. I would rather watch this than 90% of the modern Hollywood high production slop that's churned out today.
Yeah, if Iron Lung could topple the industry, be good for it. Something like this, honestly, is one of those good examples of this walked so that something like Iron Lung could run. And yeah, in that regard, this film did a pretty great job showing the world that indie films could actually be entertaining in some way, shape, or form.
The way I feel too is it's one of those things that, like Matt said, this has such love and heart put into it. It really does make me wonder what these filmmakers, hopefully they manage to make it in a way, because just on the script's creativity, I want to see more from these guys. I'm sorry, I would like to see a remake of this with an actual budget and actual actors, and like maybe make the scope a little larger, like an entire human army versus the orcs or something like that. You really could have a good thing going.
I mean, if like 5 humans did this massacre, imagine a whole human army.
Yeah, you're right. There wouldn't be any orcs left by the end of it.
So what Lud is saying is he wants to see Gate the anime, but in live action.
That's going to lead to the question of the week, which is, what is your favorite indie movie? I'll go first, and There are a lot, and I mean a lot of movies I could answer with this with. Because I really do like very much all movies. I have a film degree in that. So my answer is going to be one that is definitely a really obscure movie, and it's such a well-made one too. It was distributed by a major studio, but it still is in a very low-budget affair that is a really great movie and a great showcase of an actor. And that is a movie, Panic in Needle Park. It's a movie from the 1970s. It stars Al Pacino, and it is about a group of heroin addicts basically going about their lives and that, trying to get a fix in really early 70s New York when it was a hellhole. And it is such a well-made, well-put-together movie. Al Pacino, this is actually one of his first films. He wouldn't do Godfather until a couple of years afterwards, and he is so good in this movie. You can easily see why this man became the star he was, because his depiction of addiction, a man in the throes of drug that overtakes his entire life, how despicable he is in the role. It's a movie that is kind of hard to find. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. It is such a well-made movie. I'm shocked more people don't know about it because, I mean, it's Al Pacino, his first starring role, and he is so good in it. The things he does just to get a fix, it's very realistic. It's very 70s new Hollywood era. With that being said, man, it really, really does work out. So that's what I gotta say for my choice. Probably not the one you guys are expecting, but it's a really good movie regardless.
Yeah, my pick is going to be less obscure, but still interesting. And nobody really talks about it. Well, I mean, it still counts as indie because it's from out of the US. Mosley, of all things. Yeah, this was one of those films that definitely was the better example of selling your soul to China to make excellent animation and whatnot. Yeah, that aside, just like it because it's a pretty humble little film that somebody decided to make, telling the tale of liberation and will. Basically revolves around these creatures called Thorfins, who once upon a time used to actually stand on two legs and were ultimately pretty taller than humans, all things considered. As the years went by, some of them were put into slavery. They lasted longer even to this day. It was not great, but it was at least living, and Mosley, the titular character, is a decent guy. He is the father of one child, one current on the way as of that movie, and he's basically trying to help make sure his family is safe while under an owner who is not great. But he eventually learns that there are other Thorfins out there, another place where his family can be safe and, not be a slaver anymore. My description isn't really doing this film justice. I mean, it's definitely going to be one of those films that's not on the scale of something like Orc Wars, but to be honest, doesn't need to be. It's just one of those wholesome little films that definitely has some pretty serious stuff going on about it, and there are some pretty serious stakes in it that definitely make it one of those films that are worth checking out. That and Coati, interestingly enough, are made by the same people. I chose Mosley because it's just one of those adorable little films that looks great, is acted really great, and to be perfectly honest, more people should check out alongside the other film, Coati. That is going to be my pick, Mosley.
Definitely sounds like it's a really well-made movie. So, let's see, Matt, what would yours be?
Initially, I was going to go with Klaus, but the more I thought about it, the more I think it kind of goes against the spirit of this. Even though this was when Netflix was just starting out as a distributor, they still are a really big company, and they gave this movie a pretty decent budget. So I decided to go with my fallback that I love to talk about, Wolfwalkers, or just anything from Cartoon Saloon. Wolfwalkers is such a beautiful 2D movie, and Cartoon Saloon is basically the only company making 2D movies anymore, and theirs are all gorgeous. They're just, well, their best ones are all just draped in this Celtic mythology and coloring, the imagery, just everything that they do with it looks so beautiful. More people really need to see these. They are great, fantastic movies, and the mythos behind them is so engaging. I cannot do enough to express just how fantastic their films are and need to be seen by more people.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, man. You could not have picked a better Cartoon Saloon. I mean, other than Secret of Kells, which... yes, as well. This one definitely stands out to me a bit more because, I mean, I am a huge sucker for werewolves, so Yes. Speaking of Tales of Liberation, this one is definitely one of the more liberating movies that I have seen from Cartoon Saloon.
That is a great choice right there. I was not expecting that to be an answer, but if I did, man, again, that is a fantastic choice right there. If you haven't seen any of Cartoon Saloon's movies, I have to second that you check them out because they are a feast for the eyes. And the fact that none of them have won Best Animated Feature is a crime.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, Sharkwood, your pick me.
Well, for me, it's gonna be this. I will not say obscure, but at the same time, it's not so well-known movie. Even though one of the director of its movie is one of the most famous one, and actually, this is his very first film. I'm talking about Cronos from Guillermo del Toro.
Interesting.
That's a great choice.
Yeah, Cronos is basically a vampire movie because, the whole story is like the main character finds this device that it starts to slowly turn him into a vampire. He has to find blood and, typical stuff, but the way Guillermo del Toro just tells the story, and again, this is his first movie, and you can certainly tell the stuff that will eventually become everything he does, like all devices, amulets, and all of that. We start with this Kronos machine. The whole story of the main character slowly succumbing to the whole hunger is like emphasis for it's like supposed to be an addiction, like the story of someone falling in addiction, all of that. And this is where you can see all his framing with the movie, all the lighting, all the shadows he uses, the camera angles, and all the type of character. And for this being your very first movie, and again, it's a low budget movie, that's so great, it's so amazing, it's a thing I'm really glad I've seen, and it's not obscure, but again, this is a Guillermo del Toro film, and it deserves more love. It certainly wish more people knew about the film that made him start in the movie industry.
That is another great choice right there because, again, I think it's actually one of Del Toro's best, believe it or not, because he's made better movies since, more competent movies. I mean, Pan's Labyrinth. Man, Kronos really has just all the hallmarks of his work, like you said, and the ending is just so beautiful and heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Yeah, all really good choices right there. Now it is time for the patent pending Dragoness Scale, where we're going to rank the dragon from this movie. With that being said, this one is going to be a hard one because Balkavir's design is pretty standard dragon design, nothing too creative about it. It's just, a dragon. Characterization, well, as you mentioned before, giant monsters. So, that's nothing. With that being said, considering how low budget this movie is, and the effect is not the worst, I dare say that Wyvern looked actually worse in this movie. I'm going to give her a 6 out of 10, especially scaling on like a curve. If this was a big budget Hollywood movie with hundreds of extras and all that, she would probably get a 5 or maybe even a 4. But I'm giving her a 6 just because for the type of movie that this is. The fact that they actually managed to do a relatively competent and decent job with it. I really have to admit that this is the best they could do with it, and I'm sorry, I think it looks decent enough. So yeah, 6 out of 10. Let's see, Angron, what would you give them?
Gonna go a tiny bit lower because, I think the only real standout thing about this beast was how it ultimately dies. That is a pretty clever way to defeat a monster. Like, there are certainly more clever ways to destroy a dragon. To be perfectly honest, other than that, there's not much really going on with this dragon. The design is pretty neat for what it's worth. Can't really say that it wowed me all that much. Like, it's supposed to be the orcs and the witches' powerful ace monster. It was invincible, it took a rocket launcher, and it blew up a armored vehicle, but otherwise didn't really wow me on the same scale as other dragons in the past have. Even Wyvern ultimately had my favor a bit more than this did. So it's for that reason I'm gonna give this one a 5 out of 10. It's not bad, but the only thing I can really describe it is mid. And that's kind of a sad thing for a dragon to be in a film like this. Mid.
Yep, again, I can definitely see why. Let's see, Shark, what would you give her?
Well, unfortunately, she's a giant monster, and more than anything, she's an obstacle for the protagonists. There's not much, honestly, going for her. She's just there to be like, biggest and strongest weapon from the enemy. What I will give them, though, is the way they kill her, because, honestly, it's probably one of the most creative ways of disposing of a giant monster, which is closing the portals so she gets split, and that does for her, so, okay, fine. If it wasn't for that, you will be a 5, but thanks to this, I'm actually gonna give you a 6 out of 10.
And let's see, Matt, what would you give her?
Do I even need to say it? I will, because I like to say it. Giant monster! Actually, as far as it goes, if this was a regular Hollywood production movie, I'd be rating this a 3 because it's not bad CG for a Dragoness, but it's not great. What is saving it is
Yeah.
that this is an indie film. So for a small budget indie film, this is actually kind of impressive. So kudos to them for that. There's no characterization here, there's no personality, there's no nothing, yada yada blah blah, which is why it's just a giant monster. I'm giving them as high as I can based on that out of 5. I wish I could go higher for them. I wish that they gave some personality to this dragon, or hell, I wish we were rating the orcs. But as far as it goes, like, I'm impressed by what they did, what they were able to do with this limited budget as they had. So even though this is a 5, this is a 5 with a big thumbs up from me.
Yeah, that's true. If there was a little more build up for this creature, I would definitely rank it a bit higher, but since there really wasn't, yeah, it's honestly pretty fitting that we both gave it the same score.
Kind of a lower score compared to usual, but considering the movie that it came from, probably is best it could have done. So that's going to be it for this week. If you have any questions, or if you want to see how Saruman would have done against John, feel free to email us at fiorydiscourse@outlook.com. Visit us at Twitter at twitter.com/fiorydiscourse. Visit us at Blue Sky at Blue Sky Fiery Discourse. Be sure to subscribe to the Fiery Discourse YouTube channel and subscribe to the playlist. Like and hit the bell icon. Leave a comment. Any and all comments are appreciated. Next week, we're going to be talking about the 2013 book, Kingdom Keepers 6, Dark
Oh, boy.
Passage, to start our theme month of Maleficent Month. We're going to spend the entire month of March talk about various versions of Maleficent in various types of media, including books, theme park shows, TV shows, and movies, culminating in a surprise that you will definitely enjoy seeing.
Oh boy.
That's going to be it for this week. And until then, thank you all so much for watching, and take care.
Hey y'all.
So
Adios. See you all next week.